All right. What up, Taz fam? It's Mike from 424recording.com, and in today's video, we're talking productivity hacks. The 80-20 rule plus Parkinson's rule equals amazing. Shout outs to Tim Ferriss. This is where I first heard a few of these rules. And I know Graham over at the Recording Revolution recently did a video on the 80-20 rule as well. So I'm not jacking your video, Graham. I'm just super inspired by you and also by Tim Ferriss. And a lot of the productivity hacks he has in his books and on his podcast and on his website. So definitely check out Tim Ferriss. Hashtag not sponsored. Okay, so what is the 80-20 rule? It was basically an idea that was originally developed by an Italian philosopher, I think, or economist, who figured out that 80% of the issues that the Italian economy faced was a direct result of 20% of the people who were fucking things up. And he realized that this ratio was found in a lot of other places in life as well. And so I took this 80-20 rule and started applying it to my own songwriting and my own productivity and things that I did, and realized like I could really make some productivity hacks and 10x my results of songwriting or practicing, etc. So what I figured out for myself was I would used to do these long, hour-long jams or more of songs or riffs that I was writing. I gotta say, after maybe the first 10 minutes or so, I would just kind of play the riff over and over again and keep getting it into my head. But in the first 10 minutes, pretty much the riff or the idea, and that initial gem of the idea was pretty much complete at that point. And the idea is that in that first 20% of the time that I was doing something, I had generated 80% of my result. So, and this may remind you of the 80% is good enough rule about getting things to an 80% level and moving on. And this is also applicable to that idea as well. This is how I've interpreted the rule for myself. In 1/5 of the time, you can figure out 4/5 of the idea. And I think that's super true. And what I realized was instead of spending an hour on one idea, I could spend 12 minutes on 5 ideas and generate 5 ideas. And this isn't like super timed out, or I don't set a timer and I'm like, okay, 12 minutes to work on this, 12 minutes to work on that. It's just basically a general rule of working on stuff now. Instead of writing a riff and then just smashing it out for an hour, unless that's what you want to do and you want to do like a long jam, I get it. But I used to just waste so much time just replaying the same riff and thinking I could write a song or finish it or, complete something. And I realized, getting it to that 80 to 100% completion didn't always matter for me. For me, it was just more about generating the ideas and not being frustrated with getting an idea from 80% complete to 100% complete is a grueling marathon task. And sometimes it's fast but most of the time it is not. If you can think about the way that you work on your stuff and figure out what is it that you're doing 20% of the time that is generating 80% of your result. So for me, like I said, 10, 12 minutes, I usually have about 80% of my idea done. So rather than spend the rest of that hour bashing out the same thing over and over again, not really getting anywhere, after 10 minutes or a few minutes, or once I feel like the main germ of an idea is there, I record it, move on to the next one. So, would you rather have one idea that is 80% done in an hour, or would you rather have 5 ideas that is 80% complete within an hour that you could later come back to? I mean, the choice is yours, but for me, I know what the obvious answer is. So obviously this applies to your time management. If you only have a certain amount of time to get something done, a time frame, then, if you only have 10 minutes to work on a song, fear not. In that first 10 minutes, if that's how long it takes you to write 80% of your idea, then fear not. You can just record or practice in those 10 minutes and come up with 80% of idea. Get up and walk. So coupling the 80-20 rule with Parkinson's law, what the Parkinson's law states is that an activity expands to fill the amount of time left for its completion. So whether you have 8 hours to write and record a song, or whether you set aside 1 hour to write and record a song, most likely you're going to get that done in that time period. It's basically a law, I think, about procrastination. I mean, how many of us have said, you have something due or something you have to do at a specific time and have said, well, it's fine. It's not due until 8 hours from now. So it'll be fine. I'll work on it a little bit over the course of these 8 hours, etc. But as a procrastinator, you know that you only really start working on that idea or what you have to do within that time period that you can get it done, which may be an hour, which may be 2 hours. If you set aside a specific amount of time to finish a task, most likely that task is going to take up that entire amount of time. So knowing that about yourself and just knowing that about your day-to-day and things that you do and how you spend your time, you can say, well, if I want to record a song today, rather than say I'm going to spend all Saturday working on it, I'm going to say I'm going to spend an hour on Saturday to write and record it and finish it. Again, not necessarily a hard and fast law, but I've noticed that it really applies to the things that I do, and I think it's super true. No matter how much time you set aside to do something, you always fill that amount of time with what you need to do. You can see how this applies to songwriting or working on your art or something of that nature. But now the key piece of this puzzle about these two laws, or about the 80-20 rule and the Parkinson's law, is once you combine the two, not only is that first rule going to change the way you're thinking, not only is that second law going to change the way you're thinking, now once you combine the two, now you're really cooking and really onto something. It's just all about time management and getting things done. For me, if I've identified that 20% of that hour that I'm spending gives me 80% of my result, I'm gonna set aside that 12 minutes to generate 80% of my idea. And then when I take Parkinson's law into consideration in those 12 minutes, I'm gonna schedule that really critical amount of 12 minutes to fill exactly what I need to do and eliminate my distractions or anything that's gonna get in the way of those 12 minutes of me really intensely thinking about my idea and getting something done. Because Parkinson's law is very powerful if you set short deadlines and very concise amounts of time that you're going to do something. So if you know your work habits and you know what it takes for you to generate 80% of your idea and get it to a point where you can walk away from it and maybe come back later to finish it, or just walk away from it because 80% is good enough, as we've discussed before. Can you identify any areas in your songwriting or recording process where you're wasting a lot of time, or leaving so much time to finish something, or spending an overt amount of time just wasting time even though maybe your idea is 80% or more of the way there? For instance, have you set aside a month to mix your next album when maybe you could mix the album in a day? You know, set those deadlines, figure out your working habits, and identify those areas where that minimal amount of input is giving you a maximum output. Condense those periods of time into small amounts of time that will allow you to hack your own workflow and become more productive in the things that you want to become more productive in. This is Mike from 424recording.com. Godspeed, my friend. Let me know how this works out for you. Let me know if this makes you think about things differently. Let me know if this makes you think about your time management differently. And I hope that it helps you do something that you really want to do today or in the future. Peace.